Megan Brantley, the VP of Research at LikeFolio.com, is Tesla. And this is one that seems like it goes through significant numbers on a daily basis. $1,400 or $1,406.09 the last trade. This thing moves around dollars at a time in terms of ticks here. When you're looking at this one, Megan, up $12 on the day, seems like an unchanged day in Tesla.
Yeah, whenever we look at Tesla, this has just been such a crazy one to follow over the last couple of years. We watched demand start to surge in 2018, 2019, and really our data proved to be pretty leading just because we saw this growing demand for consumers wanting to buy Teslas. It waned a little bit, and now we're watching, especially post-corona, especially into the summer, demand is starting to tick back up, particularly for the Model X and the Model 3. Whenever we look at the ratio of people talking about buying these specific things, while obviously the Model 3 is the more accessible version, and that's where the majority of the volume comes from, the Model X purchase intent rate is really increasing. And what we like to see is that the trajectory here, so this green line of consumer demand, people talking about buying or trying to purchase one of these vehicles, made a really big shift after the coronavirus quarantine started kind of opening back up. And so this is something that we're watching to see if this upward trajectory will continue.
Yeah, I think, Megan, this is a pretty, Tesla has got some news stories and news headlines that are just amazing. And they're hard to keep up with, frankly. But one thing we don't talk about that you mentioned is demand. And one thing we don't talk about that you just mentioned is the affordability of some of the newer cars coming out that brings Tesla into the mainstream. And I think that is just as important. It's a very reported story about how when Elon Musk was making some of these cars, he came out and he kept lowering the prices to work them down to affordable levels. And even in a coronavirus where people are worried about money and people are saving, demand for cars is going up and demand for Teslas is going up. I think it's, Tesla continues to amaze on more amazing levels. I don't know. I'm out of hyperboles for Tesla.
It's been a crazy one. Kevin, when you look at the 5-year chart of Tesla, and if the guys could pull that up in the back there, look at a 5-year weekly chart of Tesla. It's absolutely crazy. The moves for about 3 years, 4 years were, still massive in terms of you're going from like $150 to $400, to back to 150. It was almost like a sine wave up and down with some pretty serious volatility, Kevin. And then you look at what's happened over the last 6 months to a year, and it dwarfs that to the point where it almost looks like, that was almost just a boring blue chip stock.
Yeah, is up 233% this year, Alex, is not counting today. Is that considered a big move? It's amazing. It's hard to, like I said, you look at a chart on Tesla and it defies gravity. Now, every other article you read talks about how it's a bubble, and Tesla has $20 billion now in shorts, in short interest, the largest ever, right? So what's going to happen in Tesla long term? And it's now what they say, it's Toyota and Ford combined in terms of valuation. It's just incredible. This stock, and then you've got, to add insult to injury, if you're one of these shorts, you've got the CEO of Tesla, Elon Musk, trolling you on Twitter as shorts. So this is just, you can't make this stuff up in Tesla. It's just an incredible story.
Yeah, and Megan, this is where my question comes back to kind of how LikeFolio approaches a name like this. Clearly, there's this cult following to like an Elon Musk type of a leader, somebody that is believed to potentially change the world. And that's kind of the narrative here. It's a very binary stock. Kevin points out just how much short interest is in this name. But also there's so many, analyst calls for for 2,000 and 1,500 and these crazy numbers that seemed to be unattainable just weeks ago. And now we're almost to some of them at 1,407. But is there really any data that can support these moves, or is this just such a story about what might happen and the happiness and the excitement around the company? Is that what's more important than maybe just the data on how many cars are being sold?
I think that there's definitely still such an element of uncertainty with Tesla. For a long time, there were questions about, maybe demand is high, but can Tesla execute, and can they execute in a profitable way? Can they actually complete the deliveries and actually meet the consumer demand that we're watching? And I think that, was it last week they released some delivery numbers that were greater than what people were expecting? I think that injected some positivity. From our perspective, we're watching demand to see, okay, are consumers still talking about and excited to buy a Tesla? And so far, especially in the last month, we're seeing a significantly increased uptick in consumer demand. I think another important element to look at is consumer happiness. When we look at Tesla versus other auto manufacturers, Tesla's at the top of the list in terms of happiness. It's, I think, over 70% positive. The next two closest that I could find were Toyota and BMW. And so Tesla is really positioning itself. I don't even know that it's necessarily as an electric car. Obviously, that is something, but it's seen as somehow luxury and accessible at the same time, which really speaks to, I think, why there is such hype and positivity around the name. But this is definitely something from a LikeFolio perspective. We've got our eye on consumer demand, especially as they release and start rolling out these different models. We're also watching deliveries. We haven't touched on this yet, but we're tracking and listening to people who are actually receiving their Tesla, and we're seeing a really big jump in delivery mentions over the past month. I think it's up 100% month over month, which, that's the direction that you want to see. You want to see a company that's able to execute on that consumer demand.
Yeah, definitely, especially when there is such a surge in demand and excitement around a brand. Kevin, this always comes back to, I believe it was actually Elon himself who tweeted this, but he posted like a note that he had made to himself back in the early 2000s on kind of his plans for what became Tesla. And it was build a luxury car, sell that to take the proceeds, make it a little bit more affordable luxury car, take those proceeds, make an even more affordable car. And it seems to be that that's what Tesla is doing and executing on. And so to kind of see the master plan unfolding, and on each step that they get closer to kind of that end goal, you see the excitement really, really pick up in this name, as that's always the knock is, can they actually do what they claim they're going to do? And to Megan's point, there is concern still. But the fact that you're seeing some of those delivery mentions tick up, Megan, the fact that we're seeing obviously production ramp up, there was some periods of profitability. There's more confidence now, Kevin, and I think that the stock's starting to reflect that, maybe to an extreme extent, but it's certainly reflecting that.
And I'll give you one more little bomb to drop in Tesla. They are approaching, Alex, 4 quarters of profitability. You know what that means? That means it can be in the S&P 500. Can you think about that as a mind-blowing example? Once you've reached 4 quarters of profitability, you are then eligible to go into the S&P 500. So talk about a nightmare fuel for shorts out there. So just one more thing. But you're right. His game plan of selling cars, taking the profits, making and selling cheaper cars, taking the profits, making and selling cheaper cars. I'll tell you a quick 20-second story. A guy that I met in the car business, I may have told this story before, talks about he owned dealerships all over at every price level. And he said the smallest cars, the most affordable cars, paid for all the others in terms of sales and profitability. So he's got the formula right. The key for him, the key for Tesla, is those affordable cars that every American and every person in the world can buy, especially as China's middle class becomes ready to buy cars like this. So, I mean, the growth here, it's mind-blowing, guys.
Well, and it's just a scalability thing too, Kevin. So I think that's clearly the point behind it. It's more, and if there's an idea behind it of it being more sustainable, obviously too. But Megan, we have earnings looks like coming out in the couple weeks here. It looks like July 22nd. So we'll revisit this one in a few
July
weeks. But
22nd.
kind of your preliminary outlook, if you were looking at it now, and how you guys at LikeFolio are looking at Tesla. Is there, is it a too far, too fast situation? Is it wait for a pullback? Or is this one where the growth prospects are so incredible for the long term that, if you're a buy and hold investor, maybe there isn't really a price to be concerned with because it's a to the moon, if you will.
Yeah, I think that really just depends on your risk tolerance and your personality as a trader. I know I personally wouldn't want to bet against Elon Musk. I think that, all the short interest we talked about earlier, I think I read an article, probably the same one that Kevin's citing, that shorts have lost 18 billion in 2020 betting against Tesla. But from a data perspective, the stock has been on such a huge run. We are seeing demand start to pick up again. We're seeing happiness, but from a price point, I mean, going into earnings, that's just so tough. That just is. I mean, who knows? But so far, as we've mentioned, they've been able to execute. They've been executing better, and I think that there's definitely potential here, and there's definitely growing demand.
All righty. Well, what I'm taking away, and we'll revisit this one, like I said, in a couple weeks, is that, hey, Tesla is always a future story, but the data is improving. It looks promising. It just has the stock gone too far, too fast? And that's always the question with Tesla. So, hey, Megan, we appreciate it. Megan Brantley, VP of Research at LikeFolio.com. We hope you have a great weekend, and thanks for joining us.